And welcome to Catholics Coast to Coast. I'm Ace McKay, loving when we get a chance to just hang out. But hanging out in Podcast Central gives us an opportunity to really dive into conversations that deepen our walk with God, but also it's a place for you to find those conversations that really challenge you. And as we head into the new year, we're looking to guide our own spiritual journey as God is opening our hearts for the new year. So we want to do that this week as you check it out, and doing so thanks to our friends at Dare Great Things, because when it comes to reading the Gospels from the point of view of leadership, it offers us a wonderful insight into our own leadership. So when we watch how Jesus leads in the best way, we discover what's expected of us as well. So let's get into Dare Great Things with this week's podcast on this week's Catholics Coast to Coast.
Dare great things for Christ.
Reading the Gospels from the point of view of leadership offers us many wonderful insights into our own leadership. After all, watching how Jesus leads is the best way to discovering what he expects from us as well. Leadership, of course, can mean many things, but when you look at how he was towards his disciples, you can't help but notice his intention to influence them as profoundly as possible. He does this through words, through teaching, through example, and most powerfully, through his presence. Well, hey everybody, hope you've enjoyed our sessions here on watching Jesus lead. This is our fifth, and we're just going to wrap it up with this one because, it's kind of like what John says in his gospel, that if you wrote everything Jesus did down, there wouldn't be enough room in the whole world for all of the books that would have to be written. That's literally in the Bible. St. John wrote that, and you can almost imagine his mind, because John, of course, went for the depth. When you read his gospel, you see that he's seeing all of the relationships between Christ and the Old Testament and trying to understand he's literally overwhelmed at the truth that is coming from Jesus and just how wonderful he is. So he says, you couldn't even write a whole book, a whole world couldn't contain all the books that you'd have to write if you wanted to say everything that Jesus did, And it's like that when it comes to his leadership as well. We could hone in on this as a theme and literally read the Gospels in that light and go on and on about it. But before we move on, I want to at least meditate with you here on an aspect of his leadership that we really need to imitate ourselves. And it's one of those hallmarks of what a Christian leader really needs to be able to give. And that's the insistence of Jesus on him giving himself through his presence, his personal presence, right? And when you look at it closely, the whole gospel's full of this power of his presence. First of all, he is God made man. He's the Word incarnate who came down from heaven to earth and dwelt among us. 30 years of his life was in the domestic household, in the presence of Mary and Joseph, in the presence of his cousins, in the presence of the people of Nazareth where he lived, or Egypt or Jerusalem. He kind of moved around a little bit there at the beginning, as we know. He was present. And it's remarkable, very little is said about his first 30 years of life, almost as if to underscore the fact that you don't have to be doing things all the time in order to be achieving God's will, in order to be glorifying the Father, in order to be living life to the full. I think sometimes we are tempted by this, and it's something we have to remember, because the world will give accolades for our achievements, for our actions, especially if our actions are excellent. But when you think about that, that's kind of a two-edged sword because, well, yes, it's wonderful to receive an accolade, but only those who get noticed receive those accolades. And if you have to really struggle to get noticed, well, then it's almost like saying that your success is dependent on whether or not others recognize it. Right? It's a big temptation in our lives because you say, oh, I want to be like, this great star or that great star, or I want to be like this leader that everybody can, give accolades to, can glorify in a way. Aristotle actually, going way back 400 years before Christ, said that glory or fame or public recognition of your excellence is the most attractive material thing that there is for a human person. But he lists it as material. He doesn't say it's spiritual. He says it's a thing of the body, because he says at the same time, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because that means that your success is dependent not on you, but on the opinions of others. And he also gives examples when he's talking about this, saying that, it's kind of funny because some people who received those accolades or who received the attention and the approval of the crowd went on to get it removed when later on the opinions of the crowd changed. And he says it doesn't seem like this is really fitting for a definition of success. Isn't there any way to go deeper? Is leadership really just a question of following the whim and the fancy of public opinion? Jesus goes a lot deeper than that. Even without people noticing him or giving accolade to what he was doing, he was in fact influencing the world. His presence may not have been noticed. He may not have manifested a lot through it, but in fact, he was already laying the seeds for an effective outreach that would come. And he was setting, so to speak, the stage for a long time by his presence. Because if the people didn't know that he was of them, from them, with them, they wouldn't listen to him. He had to come from his own in order to save his own. It's the very first law. Remember this line, I like it very much. Love is the bridge truth walks across. You can come out all day long saying all kinds of truths, but that doesn't mean anybody's going to listen to them. People are going to listen to truths that come from someone that they trust. And so you first have to build the trust with your audience. You first have to build the trust with the people that you lead. It's not a title that makes you a leader. Power is not given to you by a title or by your company. Power is given to you by the people whom you lead. And it's the followers, in fact, give you the power to lead them because they trust you. They see that, in fact, you are someone worthy of their trust and you are someone who's leading them to good things. In many ways, it's the follower who makes the leader, right? And a good leader will know that, and a good leader will keep in that bond of trust with the follower. This is exactly what Jesus did. And he stayed close with the men who were around him. He showed his transparency by his presence and sharing life with his disciples. Everyone could see who he was. There wasn't a question of Jesus doing something nefarious on the side so Jesus, they knew because they could see they lived with him. His presence gave him credibility. This is a very important little thing that we can take with us. If we're struggling to gain the trust of our family, the gain of the trust of our children, the gain of the trust of our spouses, do they see us? Do they see, in fact, experience that we are good? Right? And so, of course, in the same thing in the workplace. If your desk is always pushed against a wall and you're with your back to the door, and you don't interact with anyone who's out there, if you don't come to the different functions that your company puts on, if you don't show from the front that you're just as engaged in the process as you're asking the people to be engaged in the process, well, it's obvious that they're not going to trust you. There's a gift of just being there that actually builds a bridge for the people to then understand when you're giving direction or the direction that you're taking, that it's a good thing because you're with them. It seems like a simple little law, but that's because it is. Simple, but not easy, right? Because in the end, the temptation is, gosh, we're all so busy. We all have so many things to do that we take for granted the presence that a leader needs to have with the people whom he is leading. And the morale boost that comes when a leader is able to be present. It's a morale boost because the leader has a unique capacity inside of each one of us to see the end goal, to have the passion for where we're going. Christ came to the earth because he knew the Father, and he came to the earth to bring us to the Father. Well, that's something all of us want. All of us want to know our Father. And Christ comes to the earth saying, I'm here to reveal the Father to you, to bring you to your heavenly Father, the end goal of your whole life. So of course we're going to love him. And of course we're going to want to be near him. His presence actually brings us to the end that he is connected to, the end goal that he's connected to. So it's kind of like the leader's a bridge. It takes the people across their leadership to what is good for the people to have. Right? So Christ, the bridge builder, comes in and offers by his presence easy access to the one to whom he wishes to lead us, right? The closer he is to us, the closer we are to the end goal that he has come to bring us. Right? Now, it's the same with him, but it's also the same with any good leader. Any good leader will have the same quality. People will love to be around them because the leader makes them better. Right? So it's a real question for you then. Why wouldn't you want to be around your people if in fact you came for them? And that's the first correction. A Christian leader puts their people's good first. And that's the number one reason why the people trust them. And then brings their presence into that workspace, into that zone of leadership, so that the people can, by associating with them, find this end goal that their hearts seek.
Would you like to hear more from Father Nathan? Join the St. John Leadership Network and receive a 2-minute glance at the gospel every Sunday morning right to your phone. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So what do we mean by the leadership of Christ? Leadership has as many definitions as there are people who try to define it, right? And we can understand that. It's one of those things that's kind of like justice or democracy. There's so many definitions for it, but we all know what we mean. And I think all of us understand that one way or the other, leadership is the influence that a leader brings to the people whom he influences or who follow him. And for Christ anyway, studying that influence means that we got to say, how is it that he brought that influence to bear? And when you look at his life from that perspective, it becomes really a great example for us, right? He shows us that leadership is not something that just happens, that is something that happens through your actions, right? And so first of all, like for example, he preaches. Well, he doesn't just preach what he knows. He preaches what the people need to hear. I remember this little, parable that I heard one time about teaching where it says that young teachers teach what they do not know. Mature teachers teach what they know. And how true this was of Christ, of course, who knew all things and who was God himself, that he would condescend but then look to teach us. But then look at what that teaching meant. It means that he's empowering the ones whom he has come to serve by his leadership. Because nothing gives a person more direction and impacts their life more deeply than truth. It's a funny thing because in our society today, we've kind of forgotten the value of truth. And it's kind of a scary word for a lot of us, but it shouldn't be. Jesus says that in the Gospel of John, Jesus says that the truth sets you free. Knowing truth sets you free. What does that mean? It means that it allows you to direct your life from the inside, to be really responsible, to own your actions, to say that you know and have chosen the course for your life. And here's Jesus who's giving that to the apostles. He's not always telling them exactly what to do. He's instructing them so that they, in their freedom, can then do what is good for them to do. What a gift. Well, that's leadership. So he could have said to everybody, you just have to do what I tell you to do. He could have, said, I have all these rules and laws and you have to obey them without understanding them. But instead, Christ came and he told the apostles about the Father. He told the apostles about heaven. He told the apostles things that, are kind of vague, or at least didn't define everything in every detail on purpose, right? Because he was instructing them in a truth that would set them free. So that's one example of his leadership, right? Teaching. He's influencing his apostles towards their own autonomy and their own freedom by teaching them truth into their, in their minds, giving them the intelligence of faith. But he does more, right? Not only does he teach them, but he also does things. He shows them actions for them to imitate. You think, for example, the way that after he feeds 5,000 people in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14, 5,000 men, not counting the women and children, so there have been 10,000 some people, right? Enough food for them all to eat, which is such an incredible miracle, with no ovens, no ingredients, just giving them copious amounts of bread. He goes and dismisses the crowds and then retires to pray in the mountains alone. What an example this is for the apostles. I mean, how would you have known what to do if you hadn't, when a crowd gives you adulation and you're being swept along by the frenzy of the public, if you hadn't seen what Jesus did? He withdrew, giving them an example. Or another example is when he shows them the way to confront the Pharisees of their day, the opposition in front of them. They might have thought, well, you're supposed to negotiate with this, you're supposed to compromise this or that. No, Christ speaks plainly, gives them an example. This too is a level of influence. Teaching is one, example is another. He wants them to see what he does and also wants them to see how he does it. He's passing on. He'll tell them, go out, for example, and do these miracles. And he sends them out 2 by 2 ahead of him. Remember that? So that they can then be on their own proclaiming the kingdom of God. And they come back rejoicing because of all of the different miracles that took place by the working of their hands. They're doing, in other words, what Christ himself did. And this huge moment of empowering as a leader, where Christ, using his influence, sets them free for them to do the work that's in front of them. But he's also insisting that they do it like him. See, there's another aspect to his leadership, which is to not just give what to do, but to show the how, the culture, in other words, that surrounds what we do. Without that culture, what you do will end up degenerating one way or the other. Leading human beings is very different from leading robots, right? Like, it's not just a question of programming people to do things. They won't. People are motivated to give great work because they enjoy the process of the work itself. The how the work is done is equally as important as what they're doing. You can't have one without the other for long. You just tell people to go out and do this or that like slaves, and they're going to rebel. And so Christ instructs a lot about the culture, about the way that they are to fulfill their ministry. Seek the lowest place, he says. Wash the feet of those whom you are called to serve. Do like me. Imitate my gentle leadership with the people that you're called to shepherd one day. But even more than words, it's his presence. It's the power of Christ being with them so that they can see all the places that go beyond the words. Not just the big deeds that he does, but the little deeds he does before the big deeds. Or the way that he follows up upon the big deeds, or the way that he recreates, rests, comes back, interacts with people. All of this forms the kind of culture around his ministry that you can only pick up on by living with him, right? Well, in the same way, in our leadership, you can talk about culture, you can, here's your values, you can put them out. It's the way that the leader embodies those values that shape the way that people embrace them, right? You can't just define things intellectually. It's how they're lived out. That's, again, the presence of the leader. So there's just a real question for each one of us. Am I close with the people that I'm serving? I mean, really close. Like, I could ask them, do you see enough of me? I remember a story that was told to me by Clay Mathiel. Clay Mathiel, as you know, took over Imes Pet Food as a really small company and then grew it into a $2 billion company before he sold it. And he said, in that whole journey of his leadership, he always made a point to memorize the names and faces of the people that he would see in the plants that were producing the food before he visited. And one time he would go in the back door of the thing on purpose, the plant on purpose, to kind of go in where the employees go in. And there was one particular plant where every time he would visit, he would greet some of the folks that were in the back of the plant on different forklifts. And as the company grew and his stress became more involved, he started to take a break from that. He no longer greeted them because he said, in the end, like, he didn't think it really mattered that much to them. Until one day, when he was asking his people for feedback, one of the guys on the forklift said, Mr. Mathiel, you used to say hello every time you came in. That meant so much to me. And I haven't been greeted by you in the last few years. And I feel like the company's changed. And Clay said that was it. He would never do that. He would greet the people from now on as a first priority, because as he acted, so the people felt the company was. That's the power of leading with presence. You know, I always find it fascinating being a Catholic priest, especially doing leadership work, because I get to watch the world and interact with the world outside of faith, right? Because as a priest, of course, you can just tend to be in the bubble and be around just the people that believe, and you're trying to help them with their lives, and this is a very good thing. But a priest doing leadership work in companies like I get to do, I get to see the world kind of as it is without God. I get to see what kind of ideas are competing for space with the values of the gospel. And sometimes it just makes me smile because it's almost like the world will get the wrong answer. I'm not quite sure that the gospel needs to be defended as much as we just need to show how beautiful it is. Because one of the great things about the gospel is that our leader was present, like literally gave value to being connected in time and space with those whom he was leading, namely Jesus, who lived with his apostles. What an amazing thought. And meanwhile, and then you look at the secular world, and secular world is wonderful in many ways. I'm not here to, criticize it, but I'm also like, we act like we can replace intelligence with artificial intelligence. We act like we can have the machine generate emails for us, and we can just sit behind a camera instead of going out of our way to be together with the people. And of course we can. There's an efficiency there, but it's not all bad. But at the same time, the secular world seems to have forgotten the value and the irreplaceable value of being present. And so that's fine, but like a Christian leader is called to, in as many ways as possible, bring the whole package, bring a culture along with action. And that culture that they bring, you can't bring without being present. And of course, I'm saying you can be present virtually. That's already a form of presence. But you see, even that is a good thing. To be aware, even when you manage via webcam, that in fact, your body language, your tone of voice, the background is all a gift to your people that conveys something, messages something. I'm thinking of the law that was developed by the psychologist Albert Mehrabian. And he says that only 7% of what people understand is our words. The things that we say only impact a person. 7% of the impact is made by our words, whereas 38% is made by the tone of our voice, by the way that we say the words. It's very similar to what we're looking at here in terms of like the culture. You got a small amount of success is determined by skill. There's a lot more of success that's determined by the person's working environment, the collaboration of the team, the motivation that the company has, the way that the person feels coming into work. And then Mehrabian goes on to say that 55% of communication is done just by body language. Well, if you were to take that same rule and apply it to Christ, 55%, over half of what he was communicating in terms of leadership with his apostles came just from the way that he lived, just from being with them, 55% of it. Whereas 38% of it would come from the dispositions that he showed to them while he was teaching them. And then 7% what he actually said. Now, I'm not going to say that that's going to be accurate, because with Christ, everything's a little bit different, right? Because he's God and there's the Holy Spirit and etc. But you can see in general why the presence is so important. If Mehrabian's rule is correct and 55% of what we communicate comes through our body language, and 93% of what we communicate is not even done with words, then I think it's a great spot for each one of us to start as a Christian and say, what kind of presence do I leave? What kind of presence do I give? I can't help but, especially as a Catholic priest here, speak about the Eucharist. I mean, this gift of Jesus in his body and blood given for us at the end of his life. Why would he want to leave behind this memorial saying, whenever you do this, do it in memory of me? Why would he want to be remembered? It's because he wants to be present. It's amazing. And as Catholics, we believe that he's present in every tabernacle of every Catholic church in an absolutely unique way that's irreplaceable by any other. He's there body, blood, soul, and divinity. And every Catholic Church's tabernacle. That's amazing. And of course, other denominations understand it differently, but we all understand his words that he told his apostles when he said, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. See, the influence of Christ is that he doesn't just give influence, he gives himself. This is another aspect I think that's essential to Christian leadership, that we're not just here to accomplish a task. We're here to accomplish a task in solidarity with the people whom we are influencing. We're here because there's a bigger picture in the world than just making whatchamacallits, right? There's the collaboration, there's the teamwork, there's the humanity of the world of work that is essential to us as Christians. We have the obligation to help remind the world that work, labor, is a wonderful thing. It's actually something that builds up humanity. And one of the ways it builds up humanity is that we do it together. That the influence of a leader is not non-human, some sort of robotic command from a computer. No, the influence of a leader is done, through their presence. And when we do that as leaders and give our presence, we're giving something much more. We're giving something of our heart. We're giving something of who we are. And that blesses us as much as it blesses them. And we need it as much as they need it. We're following in the footsteps of Christ, a God who made himself present and then gave his presence as his last gift in the Eucharist, in the Holy Spirit, in the power of his word. He's reminding us that in the end, our Christian life is not just about doing things. It's about the relationship that motivates all the doing, our relationship with God.
Dare great things for Christ.
Through words, through teaching, through example, and most powerfully, through Jesus' presence, we can learn to lead. That is Dare Great Things. And for more conversations like this, you can easily find it. Just look for Dare Great Things at Podcast Central. Go to EWTN.com/podcast or subscribe to Dare Great Things wherever you like to stream. I am Ace McKay. When Catholics Coast to Coast returns, the Catholic Man Show, helping us to find a joyful demeanor that opens the doors to talking about Jesus, avoiding the someday trap, and looking for our wealth, happiness, and gratitude in the new year. So how do we do that? Well, let's check in with the Catholic Man Show next on Catholics Coast to Coast.
The destination for great Catholic audio programming is EWTN Podcast Central, featuring the best of EWTN radio, as well as faith-filled podcasts from our friends and affiliates across the nation, all in one place, all free. If it's central to the faith, you can find it on EWTN Podcast Central. It's like podcast heaven. Visit EWTN.com/radio/podcasts today.
One of the things we talk about on the Catholic Man Show quite a bit is about how, in fact, we just had this conversation with Cy Kellett in a recent episode about when we talk about Jesus to other people, that a lot of it has to do with your demeanor and just how you live and the joy that you have, like just an internal joy that you have, and it exudes out to other people. Like people can just tell, like, man, this person is a joyful person. This person is very happy with life.
Yeah.
And that opens a lot of doors into being able to talk actually about Jesus in not a weird way, right?
Yeah. Because it can go weird.
It can get weird.
It can take a trip down the weird road.
And one of I had an instance like that today.
The weird road?
No.
The not weird road.
The not weird road. But it wasn't because of anything that I did. It was something that your daughter did.
Oh.
So I want to give both props to Lady Pamela and yourself for raising good, joyful children. I had the opportunity to take Miss Mary to breakfast this morning.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And she's my goddaughter.
Her baptism day.
Today's her baptism day, so I went and took her out for breakfast.
Which is a great idea for godparents to do.
To do, yeah.
To be able
to help celebrate,
Especially on their baptism day.
And we went out, and she was just a joy to everybody around her, from the waitress to the cook to the guy who was sitting at the table next to us. She just was incredibly joyful, I'm just so glad to be here, and I'm so happy to be around you guys. And she had multiple compliments. They all thought that she was my daughter, being that, being that, I was with her having out dinner. I was like, yeah, we raised her very well. Took all the credit. No. But there was just a natural happiness that she carried. And even in the conversation that I had with her today, just talking about the things that she does in her day-to-day life, and how, there's times in which, I have a watch and I share it with Bernadette, and this week I get it, and the next week Bernadette gets it, so she can have a chance to share a watch because she doesn't have a watch. And then Elizabeth didn't have a watch either, but we didn't make the deal with Elizabeth at the time, so Elizabeth actually gets it every other Tuesday.
What? Is this what she said?
Yeah, this is what she says. But she was just very aware of her surroundings and the people that she was interacting with.
Yeah.
And incredibly intentional with obviously she doesn't realize this is just how she was raised and who she is as a person. But she was very aware of interacting with the people around her. And that says something very much for a young girl, to be able to have that confidence and the joy to be able to look at an adult in the eyes and talk to them and be polite to them, and even ask them take interest in what they were doing and how they were doing, and what are you doing for Christmas? And, just interacting with adults as a child, like that is something that has to be taught. And so, I don't like to give a lot of props to you, so I'm not going to. I'm going to say Lady Pamela is doing a fantastic job.
She is doing a fantastic job.
And it was such a delight to be able to take her out for breakfast this morning.
Nice.
And it was very impactful for me, just to see her situational awareness of other people, and the limited. This is how saints are made, right? That you don't get long contact with a lot of people throughout your day.
Sure.
There are people that you will see in passing very fast. Mm-hmm. You may only interact with this person for 5 seconds in your whole life, and then hopefully you will see them in heaven afterwards.
Right.
And so,
what do you do with those 5 seconds?
What do you do with those 5 seconds? And I was just very aware of how she capitalized.
That's why
on
living a joyful life is, like you mentioned, so critical for spreading the gospel. Because if you get 5 seconds like once a day, well, that's nothing. But if somebody, after years of having 5 seconds a day thinks, every time I see him, even though I know he just came out of a bad meeting, like he's a joyful person. Mm-hmm. That has this wave upon the shore effect of, slowly saying something. It says something.
And it says that you're rooted in not something that is finite, that the joy that you find is something that it
goes beyond, it transcends.
It transcends.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what happens in your day-to-day life, because I find the joy and the love, the beatitude of Jesus.
Right. I don't need good things to happen to me.
Right.
That's not the source of my joy.
Right.
Right. Wait, that sounds exactly in the hustle and bustle of life. It's like, right. It's exactly, it sounds like you're writing about today,
Right.
Just how much, even though things are so much different, people aren't.
Yeah. So he talks about how actually most resolutions, and he didn't say resolutions, but most goals are like the ends in which we're trying to achieve. Is probably,
firm amendment, maybe.
Is it fail not because of a lack of discipline.
Discipline,
thank you. But because they're ordered towards the wrong good.
Ah. Ha-ha!
to me, that's very interesting, right? Because like I would say, like, well, it's just because we're not disciplined. Like we have a goal and we're not disciplined enough to see the goal to the end.
He's got to use examples. He's an example guy. Does he have an example?
Yeah. So he has several examples. So he goes through that systematically that happiness is not consistent in wealth, honor, fame, power, or pleasure.
Definitely not.
But I think as we go through these, even if you say that wealth, honor, fame, power, pleasure, if one of those 5 are not what you struggle with, like let's just say hypothetically,
because there are some on there that I'm sure you don't.
Yeah. At least on the surface, I think that if we actually walk through each one of these, and
you do struggle with all of them at some level,
struggle with all of them in some way, shape, or form.
But certainly one of them is going to be more critical for you than others,
and others are not as blatantly obvious.
Yeah,
but yet you still do.
Because all of those things bleed into each other in the end.
Yeah,
all vice finds a common root, just like all virtue.
Yeah. So he talks about how he wants to rule these things out, because this is kind of how Aquinas does. He says like, okay, if like here's what we're trying to do, let's rule out everything that's not getting us to this end.
Yeah.
And so we'll start with wealth, and it says he talks about it's impossible for man's happiness to consist in wealth. Wealth is ordered towards something else, and its final end must be desired for its own sake. So the desire for God is for his own sake, and that wealth is a means, not an end.
I think secular people would. I mean, everybody would have to agree with that. To have more money, just for the sake of having more money, because there are people who want more money just to have more money, but at the end of the day, they really think that they feel like money is security. They want more money because it either gives them more power, because they feel that it gives them more security, it gives them more influence, it gives them the ability to buy more, right?
It's a means.
Nobody actually thinks money is good for its own sake.
Actually, I think there are a lot of people who think that at the very beginning, before they have money.
But really, before
they have money, they think, if I just had another $100,000.
But they would say, that way I could, if I had another 100, then I could, fill in the blank. So it's not even for those people, it's not the money. It's always the...
But they frame it as, I would be, like, my life would be so much better and so much happier if I just
easier.
It'd be easier if I had this. And so we should caveat that, or like make sure we say, like, business goals are good. Striving to do good, to excel, is a good thing, right? And so, like the virtue of magnanimity is the desire to do great things, to have a greatness of soul, and so those things are good. But making money as its final end is completely irrational.
Correct.
Because it's a finite thing, and we're trying to fill it with a finite thing with an infinite thing.
Yeah, I mean, imagine like earning money in a currency that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're just making money for money. If you're just making money for money, you might as well be earning, like working for money, a currency that is of zero value.
Right.
If just for its own sake, then that would be ridiculous.
But so to be successful in the business world, to strive to make money should be the thought process, I think, should be, if I achieve this, what good can I do for my family, for my community, for the church, for those around me? What, if I'm given this gift, what gifts can I give back to others?
Sure.
And Sartre actually even talks about this in Intellectual Life. He says, the man who seeks his rest in exterior things will never possess himself.
I like it. That reminds me of C.S. Lewis in The Magician's Nephew, which is one of the least popular of the Narnia series, but I really love it. Aslan, it goes back to the beginning of Narnia. Aslan sings Narnia into creation. He creates all the animals. And then he says to the animals, I give you, this is the first gift of Aslan. He says, animals, I give you yourselves. Right, that the personhood of
the gift of being,
that their being and their personhood. Right, he doesn't give the trees to themselves. He doesn't give the rivers to themselves, but the person, the animals who are in Narnia are persons. They're rational intellects. They are their own gift to themselves. It's very beautiful.
Yeah,
it's very similar here.
So the next one is honor or fame. And he talks about how happiness cannot consist in honor because honor depends on others. And happiness must be stable and interior. So again, maybe to go back to our conversation with Mary earlier, it's like, she, like how she reflects according to everybody else has nothing to do with how you relate to me or how like your reaction to me.
Yeah.
I'm not dependent on you for my happiness.
Right. Christ had no honor at the end.
No.
Completely stripped of all of it.
And this is incredibly hard, right? Because like, listen.
Because I want to be honored.
Right.
I think especially as men, this is something that we desire. I think men have an innate desire to be honored. That in fact, this I think is one of the dynamics in marriage that
men want to be respected and honored.
That as a man, I think, the way I can care for my wife is caring, like loving her, protecting her, serving her. But I want her to honor me.
Right.
I don't need her to serve me in the same ways. I mean, she does, but it's totally different. But really what I want is for her
to respect and
honor me. Yeah. Right. That's something that I just have an innate, like when she does, and Pamela does this, Lady Pamela just incredibly does it very well. Like I feel,
right.
Yeah, I feel, it makes me feel really great. But my happiness can't reside in this, which is the point.
And you can see where you can blur the lines here of the that desire, and then also like, I want other people to kind of look up to me.
Yeah.
I want to be a disciple. And what does it mean? To be a disciple means you have people. You are discipling to people, meaning people are looking. You are the teacher to other people.
Yeah.
And you can see where the lines get blurred by, if I do this, how many likes do I get? How many shares am I getting?
Totally.
And how many download numbers are we getting? And what platforms are we on? And who are we talking to? And who are we being invited to the next men's conference or to be on this person's show? Or, it's so easy to put your self-identity into that aspect.
Yeah.
To that reputation.
Sure.
But Sartilange actually says to live by the judgment of others is to abandon oneself. So we're talking about what happiness cannot do: wealth, honor, fame, power, pleasure. And so the next one is pleasure is, and I think it's important to say like pleasure is real. Like we're not Stoics,
Certainly.
That it is not a bad thing to enjoy pleasure. But pleasure is inadequate for happiness.
Right.
For true happiness. So Aquinas says, it's impossible for man's happiness to consist in bodily pleasures, because pleasures perfects an act, but it cannot be the end of the act. So pleasure is good, but it's not the end. Pleasure is a companion, not a guide.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. Did you write that?
No, that was also Sartilange.
Man.
That guy. So anyway, I just want to make sure that we understand that, pleasure is a good thing, and the Lord gave us the gifts of our senses so that it can be a little sliver into eternal pleasure, eternal happiness with Him forever in heaven.
We have our senses, we can know the good.
Right.
Because we acquire knowledge through the senses. It's the way we come to know things, the way we experience them, and He wants them to be pleasurable. The good is and ought to be pleasurable.
Right.
And So like you said, that's why we're not Stoics,
Right.
because to reject pleasure is in fact to reject the good, right?
Which is transcendental.
Yeah, which we don't want to reject.
Right.
But we just want to make sure we're ordering these things for the sake of our happiness. Ordering,
And in the right order.
yes, order has a hierarchy of all things. Like obviously you can't, if you get them backwards, well, now it's disordered.
Right.
Even if you're pursuing them what you think for the right reasons, but if you're doing it in the wrong way,
That's right.
you still got problems. It's easy to have problems. I got problems.
So here's the positive claim that happiness, what happiness actually is. And so Aquinas says, the final and perfect happiness consists in nothing else than the vision of the divine essence, which is beautiful. The imperfect happiness can be had in this life, but we cannot fully attain happiness here, but we can order our lives towards it.
Indeed.
Right? And so God alone satisfies the will of man.
Mm-hmm.
And so that should be the end goal, whether it be whether it be for a spiritual life, because it's very easy to get into the habit of like, look how much I'm praying or look how much I'm doing. Like this whole notion of like, I'm working for my salvation, that I'm doing all these things so that I can be loved. Whether it be in the order of your vocation, that look at all this hard work that I'm doing so that I can be a good husband or father. But that's while work is involved, but that's not that's not what the essence of being a father or husband is.
Yeah, I mean, and you can even get disordered with that. Trying to be a good father can even have a disordered place in your life.
Yeah, because you want to be either known as a good father,
or even if you're just like honestly trying to be a good father, but you do it to the sacrifice of being a son of the Father. Like first, your priority is knowing and loving the Lord, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. First, you be the Christian, you be a good, faithful Christian. Second, you love and serve your wife. Third, you be the best father you can. But it's so easy, and even our culture is like, oh, my kids are my life. Kids are the most important thing that ever happened. That I have. It's like, well,
that's disorder.
It is tech, and it's like, do they actually mean that or not? But it on its face is a disordered thing to say, because honestly, your spouse comes before your children.
Right. So when we're thinking about either resolutions or things in which we can do better for 2026, there's a hierarchy of goods, like we've kind of hinted at, mm-hmm, and this is what Aquinas talks about. There's kind of like a hierarchy of goals, and that's in the contemplative life, in your vocational life, in your community life, and there's different aspects of that, and each one holds a different weight. So if you're getting contemplative life, when we're considering resolutions for 2026, this one should be the most important one.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one that we should focus on the most, because this is what Aquinas is all about. The arena of charity. Like how do we grow in charity and beatitude, and that is through the contemplative life. That man's happiness consists in the contemplation of truth. What he says. And so the intellect's highest act is contemplation. God is truth itself. And so that the more that we live in accord with reality and contemplate on the truths of reality, the closer that we grow towards the beatific vision.
Sure.
So one of our main goals should be the union with God and the receptivity and not just activity. Mm-hmm. Which is something that I mentioned in a few episodes back, that one of the holy priests here in the diocese holds in Eastern Oklahoma. I was discussing some of my frustrations that I had, and he stopped me and he said, "The Lord doesn't need you to do anything. Don't do things for God. Do things with God."
Mm-hmm.
And so something that we could really focus on in 2026 is the attitude of not necessarily like doing things for God, but doing them like, what is God calling us to? And how can I enter into those things with our Lord?
Yes.
Which is a totally different mind frame.
I mean, if you stop and think about the order of creation and just the way things are, it certainly seems like God wants to with everything, right? God is the author of life. He alone creates life. Yet he wants us to co-create. He doesn't do it without our help, right? Even your salvation, he alone is your savior. Yet he won't save you without your help, right? So we are just, everything he does, he makes us co-workers in the way he works in the world. It's through us and with us. It's very, I mean, sure, there are some examples of like divine intervention in people's lives. Those are very rare.
Right.
You know, and they're incredible moments. But generally speaking, he wants us to be there with him when we do it. So like, yeah, that's a good attitude about doing things with God. You know, I think that's one of those subtle changes you can make that really does shift some of the way your mental, like just kind of the way you're thinking about what you ought to do.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's prideful to think, that's the problem. Like, oh, I did so much for the Lord today.
Right.
You're welcome, God.
Yeah.
Really wouldn't have
I
been
don't know how you really do all of this without me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you're never going to get this kingdom built without my help.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's a good shift. Do you have resolutions for this next year?
Yeah. So as I was kind of reflecting on tonight's topic, and I was thinking, okay, this is what I was going to do personally, right? Is I was thinking about a goal that I should have spiritually, a goal that I need to have in my vocational life, in my marriage, in fatherhood, and then like I was also developing business goals for 2026, and then also like in my community, like what am I going to do there? And really, for my spiritual life, this next year, this is not a big shift, but I want to spend a few more minutes every day in contemplate, like allow myself to have a few more minutes of silence. I need it. And I've let a lot of that slip throughout this year, where I've just allowed work or busyness, excuses to allow my prayer. Like, I still pray every day, and I still,
sure.
but I haven't guarded my time of silence well enough. I have not been a good steward of that time, and allowed other things to creep into that time. And so I really want
I think that's something like, I think everybody can be on board. I mean, I want to improve my prayer life too. I've a little bit
I think everybody.
Approach,
I think if you took a poll, if you took a poll and you asked everybody who's listening right now, like, do you want to improve your prayer life?
Hopefully,
everybody would be like, yes, I want to improve my prayer life. And then the next question is, how are you going to do that?
I don't know.
I have no idea. And so, like, I want to dedicate 5 minutes
extra
in silent prayer this year.
See, I think that's a great, because boom, you're going to do that 5 minutes, and that's just going to become the standard for you, right? Obviously, my biggest resolution for 2026 is 6-pack abs. I feel like this is the year.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm kind of the same mind of you. When I think about resolutions, what do I need to improve? My very first thought always goes to my prayer life, because to me that's where everything else starts. You know, if I don't have a good prayer life, then I don't know why I would expect You actually can have a good, successful business career without a prayer life. You can do that, but not one that's oriented in the way that I want. I don't want a successful business career. I want a virtuous business career.
Not huge shifts, just small, profitable habits that stick. That's how we have our joyful demeanor for the new year, thanks to the Catholic Man Show. You want more of this conversation or ones like it? Go to Podcast Central at EWTN.com/podcast, or simply find the Catholic Man Show wherever you like to stream so you don't miss future episodes. I'm Ace McKay. Going to bug out. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Remember to let God define who you are. And I'll see you again with Catholics Coast to Coast.